What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you guys for joining me for another replay battle. Today I've got a 1v1v1, which isn't normally a format that I like to play. I find that they can be a little bit boring because someone usually tends to sit out the fight between the other two players and then just sweep everything away. But in this case, we have a set of rules that makes it a lot more interesting. We are not allowed to fight with our entire force. We have to split our forces evenly between both players. And by evenly, I mean like pretty much dead down the center. A little bit of discretion left to us about what we want to split into each wing, but you have to be fighting both of the players at once. So that's kind of cool, and it definitely raises a lot of challenges in terms of the amount of micro that goes into this while you're fighting two players. So it's interesting, I think, for that reason alone, and that's why I want to show you guys this. But before we get into army comps, I want to thank you guys for your patience. I know I haven't really been all that active lately, and that's just because I've been so busy. I'm planning a trip to Europe at the end of this month, so I've been trying to kind of get my life in order for that. I also have Easter, of course, coming up. Well, that's today. Today is Sunday, so Easter is today, but I've had a ton of stuff on my plate leading up to that, so thank you for your patience, and hopefully this will be worth the wait. In any case, let's take a look at the army comps, then we can get into the replay itself. The first army we're going to look at today is the forces of Rhun, which I know many people seem to think are quite weak. So hopefully this video will help your opinion of them somewhat. But in any case, I've brought a couple units of Eastern Hunters. I believe I have 2 units here, and a third one over on my other wing. I've also got 3 Lokamp Rim, a couple units, or actually the full complement of the Flag Rim, so 3 Flag Rim, a couple units of the Lok Scion Rim, 2 Eastron Warriors with their armor upgrades, which I think look amazing. I think I've also got some Eastron Clansmen who are just unupgraded. This is the vanilla version of them. I've got 1 unit here and 1 on my other wing. Now, I've got some cavalry, of course. I've got 1 unit here of the Dragon's Wrath Warlords, who are a very tanky Lancer unit, and I wanted to balance my HP units between both my wings, both for a fairness perspective, since that's what the rules were, but also you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. I want to be able to fight ably on both fronts, if at all possible. Moving on to the other wing, I've got a unit here of Camel's Dragon Knights and a single unit of Loki Nesrim, which I'm actually hiding here in the tree line so my enemies will not be able to see them, possibly launch some surprise attacks. I got some Eastron Clansmen over here as well, and the same very similar composition, my Flag Rim mixed in on the front lines with my Gamp Rim, but I've also got a couple units here of the Variag Mercenaries. I believe I've actually got 1 unit here and maybe another one over on the other end as well. And of course, I've got some Eastron Hunters to back them up, and another unit there of the Eastron Warriors, which just about does it for my army. So let's go ahead and let's see what my opponents are bringing to the battle today. The first opposing army we're going to look at today is the forces of the Misty Mountains, being commanded by Silverhorn Unicorn. He's got some Heavy Goblin Halberds, some Heavy Goblin Infantry. I think he's got some Snaga Skirmishers somewhere hidden between his 2 wings as well. He's got some Bolgs Champions, a very scary unit with their first tier of armor upgrade, which, by the way, if you guys are not on the Discord, the Bolgs Champions, the Gundabad Guard, and I think 1 other unit as well, the Black Hurks of the Mountain, are all getting visual upgrades in the new hotfix, and it's going to make them look a little bit more thematically similar to the rest of their respective armies, which I think is really cool. There's a lot of other cool armor upgrades and aesthetic changes that'll be coming in the hotfix as well, so get hyped. In any case, Bolgs Champions, very strong anti-cavalry unit. They are going to be losing their AP in the new patch, but they do get some better stats to compensate for that. They also are a little bit speedier than your average warg unit. Most melee caps sit at about 1.1 speed. These guys are 1.2, so it makes them extra strong at running down cavalry units or archers, or just generally fulfilling their role as they're really more of a Lancer unit, I think, at this point. In any case, Heavy Goblin Infantry to support the line of Halberds. He's got some Goblin Archers in here as well, along with the unit of Drake Broodlings. Now, I'm going to let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. They're weak to fire arrows. I mean, everything's weak to fire arrows right now. They're a little bit bugged, but these guys are particularly weak to fire arrows, as you can see, given the way that they look. Basically, they are cold drakes. They look very icy, like these crystalline monsters from the Withered Heath in the north. So yeah, definitely try and use your fire arrows against them. It's something that we're going to use in this battle. But over here we got a unit of Mountain Trolls, and I think that's the only troll unit on this side, since trolls can't really be hidden anywhere. So let's pop on over to the Misty Mountains force, which I think is currently inside of this camp right here, but they are going to be moving out pretty quickly to take the fight to the Isengard forces in the field. We've got some Warg Riders, some more Trolls, another unit here of the Mountain Trolls, another unit of Drake Broodlings, and a unit of the Drummer Trolls, which, by the way, we'll be sharing a similar model with the Ologhai, who are going to be of a similar scale and quality in the hotfix. So, ooh, super cool, right? Got some Goblin infantry here. More infantry in the form of the Black Uruks of the Mountain. A couple units here with the Black Uruks of the Mountain. And we got some Snaga skirmishers mixed in there as well. And I think you might have some more hidden units, but we'll see once the battle begins what they've brought to fight against our third and final army on the field today. That being the, what do we call them, the Principality of Isengard? I don't know. They're Saruman's personal fiefdom. In any case, this is Isengard being commanded by Rhun of Korriban. And he's brought some Uruk-hai crossbows, as you would expect. Uruk-hai infantry, Uruk-hai pikemen all mixed in together to support one another. He's got some Uruk-hai archers as well, and I love their new models. It's not exactly new. This model's been around for a while, and I don't think it was created by the Reforged team, but by some other modder whose name I don't remember. But I love it. It's very like dungeony BDSM kind of look. I just think it's great. Over here, got some Warg Riders, of course, from Rhun of Korriban. They're going to match up very nicely with the Goblin Wargs. They are just a little bit better, though I believe they lack in melee damage. Moving on over to this end, this is the final Isengard portion, force, wing? I don't know. It's the last little bit of Isengard's army, which is much scarier looking. He's got some Nazikai here, along with some Uruk-hai infantry, and they're going to be backing up some pikes as well. Pretty standard there. Uruk-hai crossbows out in front, some half-orc spear guard to help defend them. And finally, we have the centerpiece of his army. These guys are absolute titans on the battlefield. They will be losing their AP in the 0.96 or 0.95, 0.1 hotfix. Yes, I guess is that last one. But they will still be very deadly on the battlefield. Of course, they get a little bit of extra melee defense, I believe, and I think a little bit of extra damage as well. And of course, they've got their +8 bonus versus cavalry, making them absolute monsters for your cavalry to have to face down. Even the runic cavalry will struggle with these guys big time. But that does it for the army comps. Let's go ahead and let's get into the replay. Now the battle begins with a short period of sizing up the opponent's forces, and now the Misty Mountain Goblins are going to be the first to be really aggressive in this match, which is, it's always a risk, but it's always a pleasure to see people take that risk and take the initiative when it's handed to them. Now you can see Misty Mountain forces here pouring out of this camp towards the Isengarders just a short way across the field, and it looks like Isengard is not going to try and bottle them up in this tiny little choke point here. They are going to elect to meet them in the field on a more or less flat and level playing field, so that yeah, they don't suffer any of those terrain penalties or things like that that people are always worried about. Over here, Misty Mountains slowly but surely moving forward in a fairly staggered advance, though there's not really too many chinks in this armor here. Of course, the halberds are very close nearby, making it difficult for my Enes Rim to be able to just ride them down if that's what I chose I wanted to. And of course, there is still the Drake Broodlings and the Wargs, the Bulks champions around, which is really preventing me from being as aggressive as I would really like to be in this kind of situation. So instead, I'm going to let my opponent come to me, get my forces set up out in front here. You see the Variag mercenaries already within range. They're going to begin to open fire on the Misty Mountains, but most of their forces are quite heavily armored. I believe their heavy units have a standard value of 6, which is a heavy male value, which is not bad at all. And of course, there's the Bulks champions here, which are the forces that I'm going to be trying to focus down a little bit. Definitely the biggest danger, I think, in this army is the Misty Mountains heavy cavalry. Popping on over to this end, you can see Isengard getting very close, moving forward with their Uruk-hai crossbows. Unfortunately, they don't have a bow unit nearby, so they're not going to be able to really skirmish toe-to-toe with me. I've got a lot of my my Easteron units here, and just generally very numerous archers that I'm going to be able to use to outgun these poor crossbows. Isengard going to be very aggressive, though, those champions of the White Hand, and I can see them moving forward, so I'm going to be coming forward to defend my archer line with my Lok Scion Rim, and I'm going to also pop my cavalry out of hiding as well. See, moving in with a company of my Gamp Rim and my Flag Rim as well, and that's really gonna put the hurt on those champions of the White Hand if they decide that they want to charge home. So last minute, Rhun of Korriban is gonna pull back, and let's pop on over to the Misty Mountains and Isengard confrontation. It looks like that is still setting itself up, so let's get on over to where the Misty Mountains are slowly but surely making their way towards my lines. They've now put themselves in a loose formation, trying to minimize the amount of casualties that my fire arrows can inflict on them, but I'm not really going after the infantry. My big concern is these Cold Drakes. Now, I was trying to put the hurt on them with my fire arrows, but they're a little bit too fast for me. I'm not going to be able to get off the volleys I think that I need in order to be devastating against a unit like this that is weak to fire. So they're going to be pushing their way forward, and they're going right for my East-Rhun clansmen. And my East-Rhun clansmen, I think this is where they try to put themselves in loose formation quickly. Now those Drake Broodlings are going to get themselves caught here in a bit of an ambush. My Campbell's Dragon Knights moving forward to support my East-Rhun clansmen. At the same time, coming in from the rear with my Loki Nesrim, hoping to destroy this unit as quickly as possible while still keeping my important assets here for holding the line in place. Now, as we can see, the Misty Mountains has opted for a very large, long formation to try and counter the fact that my forces are very bunched up right now. Not in like a blob sort of formation, but they are trying to envelop me and to use the strength of their numbers to surround my much more elite and much more deadly units. So we see my East-Rhun warriors moving in here to try and counter this advance from the Misty Mountain goblins. Normally these guys would do pretty well against those gobbos, but with the support of those mountain trolls, they're going to be just breaking through the line and going right for my East-Rhun hunters to try and disrupt my skirmish line, which is a great move there on the part of Silverhorn Unicorn. Things are not going to go so great for me on this right wing. Let's pop back on over to the Misty Mountains Isengard confrontation. It looks like Misty, again, being very aggressive. You got to hand it to the Misty Mountains player. I love how aggressive they're being. Isengard trying to pull back, I think, with their crossbows, but half the unit here having some very unfortunate pathfinding issues, and that is going to result in the Isengarders being caught out in the open field by those wargs, well out of range of the pikes, although some of the Isengard wargs are going to be charging home into that pike wall, and that's not going to go great for them at all. You can see those wargs getting anywhere near those pikes are going to get absolutely destroyed. Drake Broodlings over here charging headlong into the pikes, and it is going to cost them quite a lot. These guys are, I believe, technically considered cavalry, so against the Isengard pikes, they're really just throwing their lives away here. But that is going to give the rest of the Misty Mountain forces a chance to get themselves into position, keeping those wargs busy, I suppose, maybe with having all of these cavalry fast-moving threats on either wing. Those warg riders don't seem to be too sure where they can be most useful. And that's going to give the Black Rogues of the Mountain a chance to form up and then charge hard against the Uruk-hai infantry. Let's pop back on over to my end, and it looks like things still going in a bit of a skirmish fight. This is a great relief for me, honestly, because it took a lot. This would have taken a lot of my attention away from the Misty Mountains fight, which is well and truly underway now. The Misty Mountains having managed to basically break through on my right, get in amongst my my archer companies here, my East-Rhun hunters, not able to do any of the damage that I need them to. Coming in with a charge here from my Loki Nesrim. Trying to run down some of these trolls, shave off some of their hit points, and that charge from my heavy cavalry is actually going to be enough to scatter that company of heavy goblin infantry and send them running for the hills. Though the Bolg's champions moving in, and there's a second wave of Misty Mountain infantry. These ones are AP. Well, that's going to be not so great for my Loki on Rim, who are really going to be at a disadvantage in that kind of confrontation, especially while being enveloped by this massive spaghetti line here of Misty Mountains orcs. So given that those heavy goblin cavalry are on that end, I'm going to be bringing my Camel's Dragon Knights, swinging them over to my right wing to try and counter the threat of those heavy goblins. Meanwhile, my front line is getting peppered down and being perhaps a little bit too passive here. I think this is because my micro is not exactly on point, given that I had to split my attention between those two fights. So I'm making a big mistake here and letting some of my Gamprim get shot down a little bit. Camel's Dragon Knights moving in, trying to stem the tide of Misty Mountains forces through my right wing. Both champions getting a nice charge into my East-Rhun warriors, and they are now all but destroyed at this point. Only 15 or 17 of them left now. Loki Nesrim coming in with a big charge, trying to cut down more of these trolls. Let's see if that actually bears any fruit for them. Unfortunately not. Loki and Rim now evening out their formation to try and stop the Misty Mountains halberds from getting in there and causing a problem for my cavalry. Meanwhile, I'm using my camp to try and beat back the mountain trolls, who are just having a great time smashing aside my infantry. Let's pop on over to the Misty Mountains Isengard confrontation. It looks like things are not going so great for Isengard. Defeat definitely a possibility here on their left wing, with all of these trolls just beating apart this well-disciplined line of Uruk infantry and pikemen. Over on this end, though, the pikes are standing their ground very well against the Black Rogues of the Mountain, who just don't have what it takes on their own to punch their way through this Isengard pike line, and that is going to leave a significant amount of their skirmishers free to fire along the axis here of these Black Rogues of the Mountains. Beautiful enfilading fire going into this Misty Mountains infantry blob, and that is going to cause them a lot of problems. Meanwhile, Snogga skirmishers nearby Although it doesn't look like they're really being utilized right now to support the infantry line. And it's really going to be down to Misty Mountains to try and conserve their numbers as best as they can and break this Isengard wing, and maybe they'll be able to do it in time enough to roll up the Isengard line, essentially, and save these Black Heroics of the Mountain from being completely destroyed. Pop back on over to this end. Things very, very standard at this point. I don't really want to move forward here because I know just how deadly those champions of the White Hand can be, and I don't really have anything to counter them. My biggest strength at this point is the fact that I've got all of my skirmishers here, and I'm using them to kind of pepper down an important unit of Uruk-hai crossbows, which, if I destroy, won't be able to be used to great effect against my Dragon's Wrath Warlords, for example, although it is going to cost me some infantry here, so it's a bit of a trade-off. Popping back over to the Misty Mountains and Rhun fight. So my front line has managed to do very well here against the goblins. This says that defeat is a distinct possibility, but honestly, if you look down in the fight, you can see that the goblins are really not having a great time right now, and a lot of them are being cut down quite easily by my Loke-Gamp Rim. Over here, Heavy Goblin Halberds running afoul of my Loke Flag Rim, and they're managing to do reasonably well, although they are slowly being overwhelmed just by the sheer numbers and, of course, the AP that these goblins can bring to the fight, which means that I really have to stabilize things on my right wing, which I've so far managed to do. You can see a lot of dead Bolgs champions here, some Misty Mountain infantry, again coming back from routing and finding themselves routed again. These mountain trolls, though, refuse to die, now down to half of their original strength, but they're still trying to beat down a unit of my Eastern Hunters, which is going to leave my Variag mercenaries, rather, free to do whatever it is that they feel is necessary. And I believe they're going to be able to fire directly into the rear of some of these Heavy Goblin infantry who are being held in place by my Loke Scion Rim. Meanwhile, Camel's Dragon Knights, I think they're just shadowing the movements of the Bolgs champions. I really want to be careful here, and especially now that things are really starting to turn around on my left wing. You can see some breaking going on amongst my company of Loke Flag Rim, and they're being run down by the Bolgs champions, but luckily help is on the way. Camel's Dragon Knights going to be charging down into the flank of those Bolgs champions, trying to give themselves every advantage against a unit like these wargs. Because in a straight fight, even the mighty Camel's Dragon Knights are no match for a heavy elite warg unit like the Bolgs champions. And that is going to drive the Bolgs champions now back away from my lines, sending them fleeing. Drake Broodlings here, I think, are actually routing. Yes, indeed. So we've managed to deal with them and don't have to worry about them for any longer. And you can see a nicely timed cavalry charge here. Normally, I don't charge into halberds with my cavalry, but when I've got 2 units of cavalry coming on both ends, that is going to be too much for the Heavy Goblin halberds, especially in tandem with the fire arrow volleys. And we are going to be able to rout a significant number of the Misty Mountain assets, and now this fight has really swung in our favor in a big way. All there is left to deal with is, of course, the Goblin Archers, but more importantly, the Bolgs champions. They're going to be charging into... I think they were charging into my my Innes Rim, but somehow their general got caught on something and got cut down, and that is not great for the Misty Mountains. So let's pop back over to the Isengard fight, where it seems like the Misty Mountains are really on their last legs, in fact. Now, the Troll Drummers being committed to the fray alongside the Black Heroics of the Mountain. Although they have, I say that, but now they have managed to break through on the right wing. Although it seems like they've really suffered a lot of casualties in the process, and I think that Isengard will be able to deal with the remaining Misty Mountain forces here. Although at great cost, admittedly, this contingent of Isengard forces has not managed to keep their numbers well into the late game. Speaking of Isengard, though, the fight on this end, Isengard finally moving forward. I think now that their crossbows are either out of ammunition, indeed they are out of ammunition, having pulled out their swords, they have no choice but to move forward. So I'm going to be able to focus my archer fire, which is... my archers were basically unmolested. The crossbows went uniquely for my infantry. Isengard trying to win the infantry fight here, and that's going to allow me to basically just focus down any of these forces at my leisure. Still got a fair amount of ammo left at this point, and of course I'm going to be targeting the champions of the White Hand who lack a shield value at this point. Or just lack a shield value generally, I should say. I'm going to be shadowing them with my Dragon's Wrath Warlords, pulling back my company of Scion Rim, trying to defend my flank, but of course Isengard is going to want to get in there and tie up this unit of Scion Rim as well. And you can see that Isengard, very, very cannily, I should say, has brought in a unit of Half-Orc Spear Guard, which is just going to give them an overwhelming advantage in terms of the cavalry. The White Hand champions on their own are enough to beat my Dragon's Wrath Warlords. So this is not a great situation for me to be in, so I I make the call here to pull out my company of Scion Rim and to use them to shadow the cavalry engagement, or at the very least to engage this Isengard infantry here, but most especially that half-orc spear guard, so they cannot be brought to bear against my army. Charge here from my my flag rim and my Gamp rim into the Isengard lines. Uruk-hai infantry and Uruk-hai pikemen colliding with the golden boys of Eastern Rhun. Titanic clash indeed. Over here we've got Lurtz's hunting pack. Oh, it looks like I forgot about them, a ranger unit. And they're going to be charging along with a unit of Uruk-hai crossbows into my Eastron hunters, trying to silence them. I'm going to countercharge with a unit of Eastron clansmen, hoping that the numbers of my runic clansmen are going to be enough to shut down that Isengard push on my right wing. Let's pop back on over to the Misty Mountains fight, where things have not gone great for them. It looks like most of their forces have been scattered. I got my Kelmul's Dragon Knights now in amongst their heavy archers. Rear charge here by my Loki Nest Rim is going to scatter another company of the heavy archers, and I think the Bulk's champions were all but destroyed at this point. I could be wrong about that, although I think the last of them might have fallen somewhere over here, and that is indeed all she wrote for the Misty Mountains heavy cavalry. And all she wrote for the Misty Mountains army on this end generally. Let's pop back over to the Isengard fight here against the Misty Mountains, where it seems like the Misty Mountains are, in fact, going to be annihilated here. There's not enough of their infantry left to really win the infantry fight against Isengard, so Isengard is going to have a win here. So they are actually better placed than my own reinforcements to reinforce their other army over here that is clashing with my own. Uruk-hai infantry and the pikemen really not doing so well here against all of the AP that the runic infantry can bring to bear. A lot of their strength comes from the high armor values that they have, and that is really negated in a big way by the runic infantry. See, all along the line here, the Uruk-hai are really struggling. Meanwhile, he does still have an ace of the hole in the hole here, rather. Wow, words are hard today. In the form of the champions of the White Hand. They are definitely deadly, but I'm going to do my best to try and mitigate them. So now that these Uruk-hai infantry has more or less been run off the field, he is going to be free to just kind of cycle charges in and out here against my infantry. Although, pardon me, luckily I do have some halberds standing by, of course, and I've got some... Actually, I don't quite have my Lok Scion Rim free yet, but that is coming very soon. You can see my Dragon's Wrath Warlords bearing down on the half-orc spear guard. I noticed that the champions of the White Hand were nowhere near where they needed to be to try and support that unit of spear guard. Instead, they were opting for a frontal charge here against my runic infantry, though I don't believe Revan of Korriban realized just how many halberds I had in the infantry blob. I think he was hoping for an easy charge here to be able to destroy them. But speaking of charging, my Dragon's Wrath Warlord charging home into the rear of the half-orc spear guard, going to be enough to scatter that company of Isengarders. And now a fairly healthy company here of the Lok Scion Rim, still fresh, are going to be free to try and screen my back lines against any further cavalry charges by the champions of the White Hand, who are just constantly under assault now by my Eastron hunters. Now the Uruk-hai infantry in a lot of trouble here. Definitely concerned about overcommitting to try and roll up the line and finish off the infantry fight here for Isengard because of the presence of those champions of the White Hand. So I'm going to be moving in with my Gamp Rim and my Scion Rim, and of course my cavalry is nearby as well, to try and screen our back lines. And I can see that Isengard is already setting up for that charge, so I've got my Gamp Rim moving themselves into position to try and block it, which they will manage to do a little bit, but most of the Isengarders are going to be able to get in there, and they're going to cut down a lot of my infantry really quickly. Although it is going to be at the cost of several of their champions of the White Hand. Meanwhile, got my my Dragon's Wrath Warlords moving in to try and trap these guys. I really want to get them stuck and surrounded on all sides by both my halberds, my spearmen, and my heavy cavalry to try and keep them in position. Let's move on back to the Misty Mountains Isengard fight, which I think is more or less over. Indeed it is. It's just Isengard mopping up the survivors and then reforming rather for a march on my remaining runic infantry. Speaking of, fresh from their victory over the Misty Mountains, my reinforcements are slowly but surely making their way over in the form of some Gamp Rim, some Flag Rim, and of course the unit of Variag Mercenaries, who still has a little bit of ammunition. What do you know, we still managed to hold on to our Eastron Hunters, who were on the front lines for a significant period of the battle, which is pretty impressive. And finally, a single unit here of the Scion Rim. So now both sides are going to be rushing their reinforcements in as quickly as possible to try and give their faction the edge over one another. Uruk-hai infantry here being backed up with some Nazakai. Ooh, big charge there by the champions of the White Hand into the flank of my Loke Flag Rim. That was a well-placed charge there from Rhun of Korriban. I had nothing really to defend them. And that's going to swing the infantry fight actually in favor of the Nazakai and the Uruk-hai infantry, believe it or not. Got some Scion Rim now charging into the champions of the White Hand as they try to retreat. But somehow my Scion Rim are just getting run over by the champions of the White Hand. Meanwhile, my Dragon's Wrath Warlords are being committed to the fight. This is not something that I want them to be in for an extended period of time, but it does allow, of course, some of my Scion Rim to move in and try and support them. So let's kick things up to full speed now. You can see I'm playing a lot of catch-up here, trying to bring in my anti-cavalry units to fight the champions of the White Hand, pulling out with my Dragon's Wrath Warlords now. I'm going to try and get a nice cycle charge with, shave off some of the HP from those champions of the White Hand. Meanwhile, a significant amount of my infantry has been pulled out of the fight to try and surround those remaining champions of the White Hand and cut them down. Also going to pull my Dragon's Wrath Warlords out of there, but you can see they've really suffered quite heavy casualties after only a short engagement with the champions of the White Hand, although the champions of the White Hand are mercifully down to critical numbers at this point, just 2 or 3 of them, easily able to be surrounded and singled out. You can see the Nazgai, though, putting up a valiant struggle. That's actually going in the thumbnail. I like that. A ring of Nazgai selling their lives dearly against the vicious Easterlings. And that poor guy right there just got stabbed by 2 different Nazakai while he got decapitated. The Nazgai have no mercy, obviously. Yeah, forces charging in from all directions now, bringing in some of my AP units. And of course, we are going to leave at least a little gap here for the Nazakai so that we can potentially use our cavalry against them. Pardon me, as the Nazakai move in, or the Uruk-hai reinforcements move in, they are being peppered down by my my Variag mercenaries, as many of my reinforcements from the fight with the goblins of the Misty Mountains have arrived on scene, and Isengard is rushing as quickly as they can to try and get their reinforcements in there. I've also still got a little bit of surviving cavalry. I think I've got some Dragon's Wrath Warlords there. And over on this end, yeah, you can see some Isengard reinforcements that were left out in the cold a little bit. Got my Camel's Dragon Knights mopping them up. And I think I've still got another unit of cavalry hiding out somewhere that might have been going after some Uruk-hai archers. Some crossbows there. Maybe they got killed or something. My Eastern Hunters moving in to try and delay as much as I can the arrival of these Isengard reinforcements. If they came in at the wrong moment, it could be a bad thing for me. And now these Rhun Hunters are going to be tying up the Uruk-hai pikemen in close quarters for a while, which is going to allow me to surround them with some AP units. Got some Loke Flag Rim coming in from the rear, Loke Gamp Rim, and of course the fire arrows coming in from my Variag mercenaries. Bought back on over to this end. Looks like my cavalry finally engaged, getting a nice rear charge there against the Nazakai, which is going to cut them down to a meager 3 manly units. So basically, it is all but assured victory here for Rhun at this point, but it is a very interesting battle. Having to balance your attention between 2 different armies it's a challenge, and it's a lot of fun. So I would like to do more battles like this in the future. Let's go ahead and let's kick it up to 2 times speed. Witness the final stand here of the Uruk-hai pikemen. Looks like they're actually broken already, fighting to the death. And they're going to see a way out and begin to flee. And the Nazgai have been cut down now as well. And I think that's just about it for the remaining Isengarders. Unless I am missing something. And there you go. We got an admit defeat there from Isengard. Very, very good battle. Isengard actually getting the most kills, believe it or not. Fighting both me and the Misty Mountains at the same time. They did a great job. Silverhorn, Unicorn also did very well. We're all very close in kills. That's one of the reasons why I liked this format so much. Really, battles could have gone either way. The Bolk's champions breaking through my lines, if they got one hammer and anvil strike, if I wasn't able to just kind of keep up with them and keep pace, they could have crumpled my line almost immediately. It felt pretty balanced to me, and I think the results really reflect that, with most people being within about 100 to 150 kills of one another. So that's pretty cool. In any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. It's a smaller scale game. It's a slight departure from what we usually do, but I think it's a welcome change. In any case, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!